maybe all families should really operate that way, right? Like
I
those
think so.
difficult decisions about pulling the plug, it always tends to fall to one person, or like maybe it isn't even like spoken that one person is going to do it, but like one person just finally says, you know what, like somebody has to do this. So like, and that, man, how hard is that? Like,
That's really hard. And yeah. And what if that person, everybody is saying yay, and that person is the one who has the nay stance, that kind of thing. Like I could imagine that being a problem.
yeah.
And that's where it's like, I don't think it makes sense to have there be a designated person. It should almost be like, okay, well, we're going to pool the votes from everybody in the chosen circle. And if it comes out yay, then we're going to, or whatever, and
Do it
a decision.
anonymously. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would make more sense. And then it's like, okay, well, everybody, it's been decided then.
Because
This is what we're going to do.
imagine that like coming to and being like, okay, who voted to pull the plug?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
We're gonna have a little conversation.
Yeah. Oh man. But I kind of believe in that sort of uh that process. I think that makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, that is something you could have with, like a whole family or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if people ever do that.
I don't know.
Like, I mean, so like when it comes to family, like drafting that up in a legal sense, not so bad. But when it comes to like quality relationships, where the turnover might be a little higher, um, maybe I'm incorrect in assuming so, but
Sometimes,
versus,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like that could get expensive, right? Like making that legal, I mean,
Yeah.
so like, yeah, that's probably why I would opt for like choosing one person and then asking them to honor your wish to have the vote.
Sure,
Because
and that would certainly work with somebody you know and trust really
mhm,
well. And
mhm,
in a way, I would almost say, like, okay, if I had to choose a person, um, I would not choose partners as that person. So I would choose a trusted person, like yourself, for instance. Like, okay, Casey is the one who will make the decision, but I want you, Casey, to ask all my partners, whoever they may be, and have them take a vote, and then you being more or less neutral in that regard, would make the decision like based on whatever they say. So since I know you're going to be around, you know, I
hmm,
could just say, okay, well, whoever is in my life right now, um, just take a vote
hmm,
from them, and then you make the decision.
hmm.
So like the third party, essentially.
I could get $35 a month extra in royalties if you weren't around.
Yeah,
Of course, then I wouldn't have anyone doing the show with me, so
that's right. Weekend at Bernie's, man.
might dry up a little bit then.
Uh, yeah, you could make a robotic version of me from my corpse. Yep,
AI Eric.
exactly. Well, and that kind of goes into the like hierarchical thing. Like I think we had talked about it a little bit when like offline, or well, online, off air, right? Um, I,
In the past impossible never tense.
yeah. The hierarchical thing, and this is like, you know again, there's multiple different styles of non-monogamy. Some people do that kind of primary secondary sort of thing. I do not. I don't believe in that. um, but I don't care if somebody wants to do that, and I'll interact. Like, I might have a relationship with somebody who does practice that style, and I don't really care being called a secondary or whatever. Like, that doesn't really bother me. It
Mhm.
bothers some people, because those labels do kind of like, oh, you're a secondary.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
oh, and this person's a primary, man. How, if you're part of that relationship, how are you going to feel?
That
So
is
I
kind of
don't,
fucked up. Like,
yeah, it's more, those labels are more for the primary couple to feel better, right? Like, oh well, it's a stabilizing structure essentially.
yeah. I mean, I could see the argument if you share kids and you live together and all that stuff. Like,
Sure.
obviously it's primary, but there's no need to like label the others as anything other than
No,
not the primary, you know, like,
exactly. Well, and there could be, if you're, let's say I have a relationship with like three people and they all have like a husband and kids. Well, obviously I have to defer to like their relationship is obviously like whatever they need to do to support that takes precedence over my desire to hang out, right, and get
right.
together and do stuff, obviously. And so it's like, I think it's just kind of like it just exists because of the state of things. It's like you don't have to put a name on it. um
You kind of
and
prefer being in that state though, like a little bit less responsibility, a little more freedom for yourself. Like
well, yeah,
nobody's super dependent on you. Or
yeah, exactly. Well, I consider myself to be a relationship anarchist essentially.
oh
And
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. What do you mean by that exactly? Like,
it's sort of, basically it's like applying the principles of anarchism to relationships. Like you don't have a hierarchical structure. There's no like, nobody is stuck, right? Like everybody's free to come and go. Like, okay, there's no like expectations, there's no labels necessarily, um, and no primary, secondary, whatever. It's just like, hey, we're just partners essentially, and we don't have to call it anything else, you know.
mhm.
Um, and I don't, and that's the thing. I struggle sometimes, like trying to, like, how do I say when I'm interacting with other people? Do I call somebody a partner? Do I call them like, what? How do I label that when I'm interacting with somebody on the outside? It changes.
Okay.
Um,
So a hypothetical comes to mind just now. Uh, because I've heard you use the term ethical non-monogamy before.
mhm,
So in a hypothetical situation, as a relationship anarchist and an ethical non-monogamist, say a
mhm.
woman comes up to you who is in a monogamous married relationship, has kids and all that stuff. Husband doesn't know anything about it, but she wants to have a side thing with you. What do you do?
Well, that's a really risky thing to involve yourself in, and I probably would avoid that.
Hmm.
And well, because it's a whole ethical thing that the ethical term applies to essentially everybody being aware of what's going on. It's happening on the up and up,
Uh-huh.
so everybody is aware, whether the other person, like the partner of the person you're with, um wants to know you or not. It's irrelevant. Like that doesn't really matter. What matters is that they're aware
Yeah.
that something's going on.
Okay.
um
Yeah.
and and that, because I mean, just from an ethical standpoint, that's how I work. But also it's a pragmatic sort of thing too. It's like it never ends well if you
Right. Yeah.
go down that path.
Yeah.
Like that's a very bad direction to go, no matter what.
Yeah. Um,
And I think like it's more common in monogamy for that to happen than in non-monogamy. Like especially poly people.
uh-huh. Well,
Because it's like what's why hide that from another person? Just be honest, you
well,
know.
that brings me to another hypothetical though. Like, let's say you're out at a bar and you start talking to some girl and find out you know, she's poly as well, and you know, things get hot and heavy, and that night you go home and have sex or something. Do you first need to contact each of your tertiaries or whatever and be like, hey, is it cool if I, you know, have sex with so and so? And like,
well, some people expect that. So there are people who that's their particular relationship style is like, I want to know in advance
so
what's
you got to have a
happening.
lot of conversations at the front of these relationships, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, or you know, throughout
Yeah.
generally. And you know, me, I don't care if somebody wants to do something. Like what I want to know is like if things
Was it
become,
safe?
well, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
But what's more important for me than anything really is just like, hey, if this person becomes a big part of your life, I want to know about them and meet them.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, that I don't need to know about the one-off date that somebody went on. Like, who, I don't care about that, and I don't really usually share that with anybody either, because it's like, well, it doesn't even matter. Like, it's not even a thing. What matters is when, like, oh, I'm interested in spending a lot of time with this person, and we're getting along really well, and we got the feels and stuff like that. That's the point where it's like, okay, you gotta let people know, like, hey, and get together and meet people, and I want that. Like, that's I like with my own partners, I want to meet the people that are important in their lives, whether it be family or other partners or whatever, and I want to share that with them as well, like my own side of things.
Mhm.
And yeah, I I don't know if that answers your question or
No,
not.
yeah. Um, in your particular philosophy of that sharing, like, I guess this is another hypothetical. What if there's a person that kind of wants you to be their dirty secret, you know, like keep you hidden, not introduce you to anybody, or tell that, you know, their family or their other partners or anything. It's like for
Well,
their own reasons, right? Like whatever that may be.
sure, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying before, like prior to this, is like the different people operate differently, and you know, they may be comfortable with one thing or another, or
Mhm.
you know, that kind of thing. And I'm okay with that, I think, as long as everybody is aware that a thing is occurring, right? Like, oh, this person is seeing somebody else. Like that's the important thing. Like beyond that, it's like it's up to the people. Like maybe, and not everybody's comfortable knowing, meeting another partner or whatever. Maybe they, you know, that's too much.
So it's okay to be a secret as long as it's not a lie.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, I mean, I would like to meet everybody, but that's
Uh-huh.
just me. And I can't change another person or have
Right.
expectations that other people are going to do everything the way I do it.
Yeah. Because
So,
I think there are like open marriages or whatever where they're like, do what you want, just don't tell me. You know,
mhm.
like I don't want to find out. Like keep it
Yeah, yeah.
secret.
Like
You know, like
they might want to know, they, you know, they want to be aware that that person is out seeing other people or going on dates and stuff, but maybe they don't want to know all the details.
yeah.
That's pretty common, you know.
Huh.
Some people do. Some people really are excited to hear all the details. They want to know everything. Like, tell me everything, because it's a whole compersion thing. It's the, you know, oh, it's like living vicariously through the other person. Like
Tell me more. Tell me more.
yeah, it just adds to the spice, you know, to add spice to things. Um, so it's really an individual thing. It just depends on what that person enjoys or is comfortable with.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, I think we've had like another killer fucking episode because that's, you know, like that's a lot of good points that I don't think we even really like overlapped anything that we did in the initial episode.
No, well, maybe a few little tiny bits here and
Yeah,
there.
like tiny details, but like, yeah, that's super good. So yeah, of course, point people to the link to the initial episode, which is a totally different episode with completely different spangles.
Well, and also I this is something that I enjoy discussing and thinking about. So I'd like to hear people's comments, like leave a comment or ask a question or raise a concern or something like that, and maybe we'll compile all that together and go back and talk more about it.
I think that the biggest takeaway that people really should have from this discussion, though, is that, we're two totally different philosophies on this, and neither of us are like, well, you should be doing it this way. Like it's totally respectful of like, hey, if this is what you want, like, and that makes you happy, awesome.
That's ultimately what it's all about. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, I could never be monogamous ever. But I don't fault anybody if they're monogamous. Like, like if you're happy, then that's all that matters.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. I think
last time you said like you could do that. You just choose not to, but now you're like, oh, I could never be monogamous. So like,
maybe it was a slightly different context sort of thing.
Maybe.
Possibly. Like, I guess I could, like, yeah.
I think you said something along the lines of like, I could, because, I have morals, and, like if the person you're with wants that to be the case, like, I think that was, maybe it was a hypothetical, like, like you really fell in love with somebody that was totally like, no, it's monogamous, and like, then I
in a hypothetical situation, but and
that's kind of the boat I'm in. Like, even though I was more like in the swinging camp or whatever, even right at the beginning, she said like, I want you to be totally sure if you can be okay with like not having swinging. And I was like, absolutely. Like, I don't need that. I haven't needed it in several relationships between then and now, like it. So I know it's not going to be a problem for me, but like,
sure. Well, and this is the thing.
I super don't have a problem with it now because I'm like super into this one.
Yeah. Well, and I guess maybe my only thought about monogamy is, I think everybody should at some point either ponder it or just try, like explore a little bit and dip your toes into those waters and just see if it's right for you, because it might be. But do your homework, do some research, talk to people who who are veterans of non-monogamy, and get some advice, and learn how to go about it, because a lot of people, I think, kind of go in blind, because again, it's not talked about in the mainstream, so people don't really know what to do, and they don't know all the pitfalls and things that you should be cautious of and things like that. So I think it's important to do some research before exploring that of it, but I think everybody should, because you might find that it enhances your life. Maybe it doesn't, and then you can go back to the way things were. It's like, just because you engaged in, like went on a few dates and maybe slept with a few people, that doesn't change the relationship that you currently have, your main one. It's just a thing you did, and found out, oh, well, that doesn't work.
I can see the argument that it can change things, though. Especially since, toward the early part of the episode, you had mentioned like, like say you start monogamous and then decide to become poly, things change, right? Like, of course, there's a lot of differences. Things have to be handled differently, like
not permanent though. I mean, you can easily go back with that. Okay, so you had that experience, like, and that's the thing. It's like, you have to have a solid relationship to be able, like, you got to be solid. But here's the thing: it's like, if you can't weather going out and exploring non-monogamy briefly, well, then your relationship isn't that sturdy to begin with.
Sometimes you don't really have the bandwidth to work on a thing right now.
No.
And something, you know, like, let's say with the case of like jealousy or something, like if there's something you know is going to make you jealous and you make it known that that would make you jealous, and the person that you're with and you trust and depend on does it anyway, you may not have, well, I think the current way to say it is you may not have the spoons right now to work on that part of yourself, you know, like
those are things that, like, learning how to deal with that, how to calmly and rationally deal with the feelings, because we all have feelings. That's an important skill, and I think challenging yourself occasionally and trying to overcome those things could be beneficial, even in a monogamous relationship.